Hello, and welcome to all our awesome listeners. This is a good podcast, and it's, good.
I'm Regev.
And I'm Zola.
And we will be your hosts. In this podcast, we will explore how people decide between good and evil.
Between right and wrong.
All school year, we have been studying Judaism and Jewish thinkers and what they have to say on the subject.
Today, we will present to you what we found.
Now, we really didn't want to,
but our teachers made us.
Yeah, they forced us to ask our parents.
Can you believe it?
Yep, we had to ask our parents for their advice about what is right and what is wrong.
Don't get the wrong idea here. I'm not admitting that they might know what they're talking about.
But despite that, here's what they had to say.
Hey everybody, this is Rob Walker. I am Owen Walker's dad. I'm sitting here with Owen right now. We live in Hyde Park in the south side of Chicago. I am 48 years old. And what do? Well, for my day job, I'm an attorney. In my real life, I'm an artist and musician.
How do you determine the right thing to do in a difficult situation?
If I have to make a really tough decision, I often find myself asking myself, how will this play out if I choose A or B? If I choose A or B, what's the after effect that I will have to deal with? I try and choose whichever path will serve the highest good for all concerned.
How do you feel responsible for your actions?
Because I have to deal with the effects. I'm an adult, so whatever decisions I make, I have to deal with the consequences. I don't get a pass.
Can you share a personal story that highlights a dilemma between good and bad?
Sure, we're looking at it right now. When we look to the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and the fact that I know people who were born on both sides of those lines, who are good human beings, and none of them deserve what their families have had to deal with in either direction. There is a horrific dilemma between good and bad, and I'm seeing both these peoples being demonized in a way that is unfair. And I don't have an easy answer to that. And that's something that I struggle with every day as this war drags on. And it's playing out in front of us, and I don't know the way out. I don't know the way forward. I just really want the hostilities to cease so that both our peoples can live in peace and prosperity, and I just don't know how to get there.
That's why I want Israel and Palestine to unite.
We'll see how that happens.
If they manage to.
We'll see how that plays out.
How do you know the difference between right and wrong?
First of all, there are a lot of different references that people can fall back on to tell them right and wrong. I mean, of course, we've got the Torah, and the Torah gives you all these different commandments of things that you're not supposed to do, the things that you're supposed to do. So that's one set of laws. Now, we also happen to live in the city of Chicago, in Cook County, in the state of Illinois, in the United States of America. And on all of those levels, on the city level, the county level, the state level, and the national federal level, there are all these different laws and rules that come into play. So you have the Torah giving you do this and don't do that. And then you have all these other laws that the government provides between do this and don't do that. However, and this is super important to pin down, sometimes what's right and wrong has nothing to do with what's legal or illegal. And there are even situations where doing the right thing is absolutely illegal. When Martin Luther King was leading those protests for the rights and freedoms of his people, he was absolutely breaking the law. But was he doing the right thing? In retrospect, we would tend to think, yes, of course he was doing the right thing. So, on the one hand, you have laws, both religious and governmental laws, dictating what's legal and illegal. But that's still not the same as what's right and wrong. Sometimes you have to just be really comfortable with your inner conscience, with your highest self, and to see if the proposed action really resonates with what you know in your heart to be right or wrong.
My name is Eliza. I'm Ben's mom. I'm 44. I live in Flossmoor. I'm an attorney.
Okay, now my first question is, what does it mean to you to be good?
Well, it includes trying to treat others well and take actions that don't harm other people but help them.
How do you feel responsible for your actions?
I mean, you are responsible for your actions. Yeah, you have free will. You're accountable for the choices, the actions and inactions that you undertake.
My next question is, can you share a personal story that highlights a dilemma between good and bad?
If I was working on a case at work and I missed an important appellate court decision to cite, yeah, there's two ways I could handle that. One would be to pretend I never saw it and, deny. Or the other option is to turn that into sort of a learning decision, be like, I guess my research wasn't thorough enough, or I should have done this differently, and then I would have found this case. So, taking ownership of your mistakes, even inadvertent ones, is generally the better course.
My next question is, what is the line between right and wrong?
That's very situationally dependent. You ask a lawyer a question like that, that's the answer you're going to get. It depends on the situation. It depends on what my options are. Sometimes all you have are bad options, and then it's just a question of trying to pick the least bad of options.
So, what you're saying is there's no clear line, and sometimes, like, none of the options are right, but you have to do the one that seems the least wrong.
I think there are some situations where the line between right and wrong is pretty clear, like abusing an animal. Like, there's no situation in my view where you're like, yep, that's the right thing to do. But taking that a step further, suppose it's not I'm just hitting this dog because I like to hit dogs, but I'm trying to get these oxen to help me farm the fields that grow the only food I can eat. It could become a more gray situation. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you believe in good and evil?
I think there are things that are evil. There might be like a few people in history that are evil, but on the whole, I don't think anybody is all good or all evil.
Hi, I'm Reed Singer. I am the parent of Zeke, Felix, and Annika Singer. I'm speaking to Zeke today. I live in Chicago. I'm 49 years old, and I work for Ulico, which is an investment company.
What does it mean to you to be good?
To do your best not to hurt anyone, physically or mentally, to try to act in a way that doesn't cause harm to other people or to the world. So one thing that I do is to try to put myself in the other person's shoes as best as I can and try to think about what effect my actions have on the other person, how it makes them feel, how it affects them, and try to make sure that my actions are not doing any physical or psychological harm to another person.
How do you feel responsible for your actions?
I do feel like all of us are responsible for our actions. We don't always act in the way that we wish we would, and that mostly means if we don't live up to what we want to expect to be as our best people, then we try to do it better next time and just try to keep improving.
Can you share a personal story that highlights a dilemma between good and bad?
I have people that work in our company, my company, and then we also had a household person that worked in our house. And when it's not working out with those employees and you have to let someone go from their job, that's been the hardest thing. One of the hardest things that I've had to deal with in my life is when you have to let someone go from a job and balancing the pain and hardship of that. But you have to keep reminding yourself that in the long run, it's most likely to be the best because they're probably not in the right job, and if they leave this job, they will eventually find one that's better for them.
What is the line between right and wrong?
I don't think there is a discrete line. It's a judgment, and a lot of times actions have a little bit of both, a little bit of good and bad in them.
Do you believe in good and evil?
Yes, I do believe in good and evil. I think for most people, we have a little bit of both. I don't think any one person is all good or all evil, but I do think that all people have good and evil impulses, and not everyone has the same amount of good and the same amount of evil. Some have more good, and some have less.
Do you think there is a such thing as right and wrong?
I do, yes.
Now we've come to everybody's favorite part of the show, Right and Wrong with Regev, where I, Regev Strolovslein, take your calls and solve your everyday ethical problems.
Hi Regev, my name is Coco. I just caught my best friend's boyfriend on a date with another girl. I feel like telling her would be the right thing to do, but I'm scared she will get mad at me. I just want to do the things that is best for her. What should I do?
That's a really tricky situation. Let's look at it from perspective Martin Buber's I it, I thou philosophy.
Well, what is that?
Well, it's a way of analyzing relationships between people. An I-it relationship is a purely transactional relationship where you are trying to get something out of the other person only to benefit yourself. On the other hand, an I-thou relationship is one where you are genuinely invested in the well-being of the other person and do what is best for them regardless of how it helps you.
Well, of course I want to help my friend.
In that case, you should think about what you want if you were in her situation. Not telling her so she does not get mad at you might be a good way to help yourself. But in the long run, you wouldn't be helping your friend. Telling her so that she knows the truth about her boyfriend, even if it makes her mad at you right now, is the best way to help her in the long term.
Okay, I'll tell her. I hope she doesn't get too mad at me and forgives me.
Me too, Coco. I hope everything works out for you.
In addition to studying the ideas of famous Jewish people and learning from our peers, we also interviewed our teachers and clergy.
For those of you who don't know, clergy are people who work in religion.
Yeah, those people.
And we asked them how they make decisions about what is right and what is wrong.
And how they make decisions when it's hard to tell.
Here is some of what they had to say.
Hey, this is Cantor David Berger. I'm the cantor here at KAM Isaiah Israel congregation in Chicago. I've been here for 10 years.
What does it mean to you to be good?
Well, I'll start with a Jewish definition of being good. The prophet Micah says, Higid lecha adam matov uma Adonai doresh mimcha. It is told to you, O human, what is good and what God wants from you. Right, so it says so it's a definition in the prophet Micah of what is good. And it says, Ki im asot mishpat, right, to do justice, v'havat chesed, to love kindness, and v'hatzneah lechet im Elohecha, and to walk humbly with your God. So that's not a bad definition, right? Do justice in the world. To do good means to see the world as a hard and difficult place with a lot of injustice. So being good means trying your best to make it better. To love kindness, right? To show kindness, to be kind to people in your life and around you. And despite all the feelings that you are so good and you're doing so great, to still manage to maintain humility in that and never feel like you're good enough and you can stop now, right? And always have to stay humble and stay with a sense that there's many more levels to achieve.
How do you determine the right thing to do in difficult situations?
First of all, you often don't know if you did the right thing until after, right? I think a lot of times you do what you feel is the most right, which can be really confusing. Sometimes I'm looking at things and I feel like I see this is good for me, but this is good for them, and this is what, like, determining the right path is amongst the most confusing things a person could be asked to do sometimes. Sometimes you never get to find out if you did the right thing at all. But I think the best you can do is to ask yourself what are the most important values that you hold on to, and which of the choices that you have in front of you is going to best match with the truth that you believe in. The best we can do is to try to live with as much responsibility as we can, and sometimes it's too hard. I make a big point of buying fair trade coffee, but I can't do that with everything that I buy, right? A lot of the things that we use all the time are made by people who are paid pennies and who are living horrible lives, and our existence to buy this like sweatshirt for $10 is dependent on them having a miserable life. Is that okay or good? No. Can I hold that on myself every time I walk into a store? No.
Can you share a personal story that highlights the dilemma between good and bad?
When faced with a choice about whether or not I was going to go and join on a tour of the settlements, what do, right? You have a chance to see this place that is a place of like a lot of debate, and people are angry, and people are like, some people, there's a lot of strong feelings about these places. So I have the chance to go and see it with my own eyes, which is maybe a great way to be able to speak more intelligently about it, be able to advocate better for what I think. But also, going on the tour maybe means I'm supporting these people in some way, and then they're going to think that I'm coming in order to like show them that I'm with them when I'm not, right? So that was a really hard choice, ultimately. The truth is that what I did in the end was that I did go. I didn't go on the tour with settlers that I didn't like, but I went on another one that I thought better matched my values. So I decided that it was worth it. It was important for me to go and meet people who had very, very different feelings about the world than I did, so I could hear it straight from their mouths and meet them and see where they live. And I needed to do it on terms that made more sense to me.
What does the Torah say about good and evil?
Well, right, in the very beginning of the Torah in Genesis, right, there's the Garden of Eden, and there's the tree, right? And this whole story about the tree that is going to give people the knowledge of good and evil. And if you eat the fruit, then all of a sudden you can distinguish, which is as if to say our natural state as people, the way that we were created, is actually that we are not able to discern. Good and evil, it turns out, are not a natural thing for people to always be able to see. And that what we need in order to determine what is good and what is evil is instruction, is something from God that is beyond what we could do on our own. In the story of Genesis, it's a tree with a fruit, right? But in life, it's the Torah itself, is something that is the very tool that allows us to navigate the world.
Should you do something good for a younger person and not do something good for an older person?
Age is not going to make that decision for me. Age is one of many characteristics. Now, what I could imagine you're asking is, if I do something good for a younger person and that person has a whole life to live in that goodness, and an older person, it's like they've already lived their life, right? So maybe there's a question there in it about benefit, right? Everything is a cost-benefit analysis, but ultimately, that can only be one of like 600 factors that we have to think about when we decide, because all of us live in a world of limited resources. It's always about taking all the factors and seeing with the limited resources that I have available to me, how can I make the most good happen?
My name is Rabbi David Young. I am originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, currently living in Skokie, Illinois, and I am serving as the rabbi for KAM Isaiah Israel in Hyde Park for the year 2023 to 2024.
What does it mean for you to be good?
For me to be good means to do my best, both with my family and at work, and try to do things that make other people feel better. Being good is about paying attention to other people's needs and focusing on them, while at the same time making sure that my needs are met as well.
How do you determine the right thing to do in difficult situations?
In difficult situations, I figure out the right thing to do by thinking before I act. Sometimes I'll take a breath. I will very often write an email and then not send it for a little while. Musar is a practice of mindfulness. There's meditation involved. And when it talks about controlling one's temper, the mantra that I like to use is I try to move the match away from the fuse. And I think about how I don't have to like put out that fire within me, because sometimes a righteous anger can be a good thing, but I do try to not make it explosive. So that's the moving the match away from the fuse. Like, I'll still be able to use that fire for passion and for warmth, but I won't make it destructive.
How do you feel responsible for your actions?
I'm really just aware that everything I do is a reflection of a person's opinion of me. And when I'm in the world, walking on the street, and there's a stranger who's behaving badly for whatever reason, I might ignore them. I might talk to the people who are affected by this person. I try to judge whether or not my presence in a situation will alleviate or escalate what's going on, because it can sometimes go either way. So it's really all about thinking before I act.
Our final question is, can you share a personal story that shows the difference between good and bad?
What's on my mind right now is we are dealing with a landlord who is not behaving well. But right now we are trying to do the right thing, which I suppose is also the good, by doing what a lawyer tells us to do rather than what we think is the right thing to do. And sometimes when you're struggling between good and bad, you need advice from a professional, because I don't know the law. And sadly, I can't tell you how the story turns out, because I don't even know yet.
My name is Deanna Neal. I am the Director of Lifelong Learning at KAM Isaiah Israel.
What does it mean to you to be good?
I think being good is sometimes listening to something deep within yourself that tells you which direction to go for right or for wrong. I've become a little bit cynical as I've gotten older, in a weird way, where I feel like when I look at nature, I don't really see good and bad in a clear way. So if I see there's like a hurricane, or if I see something tragic happens to somebody randomly, it doesn't really make sense. And I feel like that there's forces of the natural world that seem to have their own logic, and that human beings have created this idea of what is right and wrong that doesn't always fit in with those natural forces. And some people might call those natural forces God. Other people might call the inside of what trying to have the morality in the face of that God.
How do you feel responsible for your actions?
So let's say I say something that really deeply offends you or hurts you, and I didn't mean it, right? But maybe I said it in a way that I can fix how I said it. So I can't help how somebody else feels, but I can try to fix where I'm coming from, right? So it's what's my job in de-escalating, or like bringing something down that can get, heated.
Can you share a personal story that highlights the dilemma between good and bad?
How many of you guys are aware of the war that's going on in Israel? Yeah, okay, so we're aware of it. And I read about the news pretty much every day, and there are massive moral decisions that are happening every day about innocent people being killed. Can you justify ever innocent people being killed? What happens when innocent people who are in Gaza, right, are potentially used as human shields for Hamas? Yeah. So that means if innocent people are integrated with people who really want to do harm, what are you supposed to do with that? Those feel massively personal for me, not just as a Jewish person, but also as a Jewish educator. Like how am I talking to you about that, and how do I face those moral dilemmas with you? I mean, this is happening right now. I know it might not feel like it in our safe space here, but when you get older, you're going to look back and people are going to ask you about this time period and what happened, and what do you think happened?
Your personal dilemma is just like thinking about what's right or wrong in large situations like the war.
I would actually make it even more specific to, how do I talk to you? this class about this issue. I mean, that's a personal thing for me as a Jewish educator and as a human being. How do I say to you what's right or wrong? Even just educating on that, and because there's so much dispute over what the facts are that even led to this, has been very challenging for me personally as an educator, and I think for almost all Jewish educators.
What does the Torah say about good and evil?
Many things. Well, not just Torah, but I'm going to pull it from liturgy. There's two pieces that come to mind for me. One is in High Holidays, in this idea of judgment. I mean, who of you feel like the idea of God being a judge is comforting? Or who does that feel kind of bad for, to be like, God is a judge? Okay, yeah, I'd say like a lot of people in our day and age like feel like, who wants a judgy God? You know? Yeah.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
What if you don't believe in God?
So a great question about what if you don't believe in God. I'm going to come back to that in a second, okay? Thinking of God as the way Jewish texts would sometimes say, especially on the high holidays, or when we look at our actions over the high holidays especially, we say, God is a judge, right? And I used to find this to be really uggy. Ooh, I don't want to be judged in that way. Sometimes we don't know. There's no one to say this is right or wrong, and there's some comfort in me. Something else that at the end of the day was like, this is right and this is wrong. And I think that's why it's in our text. I think that's why it's there, to give comfort in times when it's not clear what's right or wrong, to say, don't worry, God or some larger force knows what's right and wrong.
Does anything change with the thought of that in the real world there's going to be a bunch of different judges who are going to give different punishments for the exact same crime?
Yes, well, that's my point. So if there is like an eternal judge, right, that's theoretically God that really knows, then on this earthly planet, then we have these individual judges that maybe they decree something wrong, but if at the end of the day, there is some other force that is judging the whole picture. And to answer about the not believing in God question, we can certainly have a moral framework without believing in God. In fact, Judaism is a very existential religion. It's very much about not based in like belief necessarily, but what are you doing? Like, what are you acting in the world? Which brings me to my second piece of sort of Torah, or just one little quote from Pirkei Avot, that's mitzvah goreret mitzvah, avera goreret avera, which is one mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, one wrongdoing leads to another wrongdoing. And the idea, I think, behind this is if you do good, right, if you do something good, then you're going to be more compelled to keep doing more good. And even so, if you do something good, then somebody else might see you do something good, and they might follow you. So to me, this is like a totally actionable thing. And then the same idea of like, if you kind of miss the mark, right? Like think about, let's say you're falling behind in your schoolwork, right? Or like, okay, I'm gonna put it off like another day, and then you put it off, and then you kind of fall into this pattern of like falling behind, and then it's like much harder to catch up. Yeah.
So like maybe you don't do your homework, and then you lie about it.
Right.
And then you cheat to get it done, right?
Yes.
So that's how one thing leads to another.
Exactly. And you sort of dig yourself a hole, as they say.
I noticed that you went from talking about the war in Israel and Gaza to the part in the Torah about like one good thing leads to another good thing, one bad thing leads to another bad thing. Mm-hmm. Do you think you see that in real life situations like the war in Israel, but like other situations as well?
I'm in the middle of reading a book called Just and Unjust Wars, and I think the question I have to ask at myself and anybody is, do you believe in war at all? Is there ever a justified war? So if you're a pacifist, then the answer is no. But if you think that there are times where a war is justified, like meaning going to war is an appropriate response for an action, then you have to say, well, then why? Then what? And in what situations? I think that's why so many people who are trying to do good in the world feel very conflicted about what's happening. Because do you say that going to war, because in some ways you think like, oh, is that an avera? Is that a missing of the mark by going to war, right? Or is that like a means that's necessary to get to a place of peace?
So with the book you're reading,
yeah.
Do you feel that war is justifiable in some moments or not?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I think right now my answer would be yes. I think in the same way, again, I try to take things down to like a micro level of like, what would I do if somebody like invaded my house or if somebody attacked me? Would I not attack them back? And some people might say yes and be pacifists and believe in total nonviolence, right? I don't think that's me. I think I would fight back. And I would think that it's okay to fight back when being attacked. So I am not personally a pacifist, although I admire pacifists greatly.
So in my opinion, I think self-defense is okay because if someone is trying to break into your house and trying to hurt you, it's okay to be defensive because they're trying to harm you.
Defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, not everybody will agree on this. Like some people might say, you know, I don't know about, again, going to siblings. I mean, I have 2 really little kids, and like one hits the other one. I don't tell the little one to hit the other one back. Like, I mean, that's just not how I parent, right? So there's some level where I look at that, I'm like, is this really effective? You know, I don't know. But then again, you know, she might just do it on her own, you know, and sort of defend herself.
Where do you think the line's drawn for, like, self-defense is legitimate and won't be, like, too much? Like, do you think, like, if someone broke into your house and they were, like, let's say they didn't have any weapons and you were to have a gun, do you think shooting them would be okay, or do you think it wouldn't be okay?
It's hard for me to come up with like such a specific scenario. So I think the short answer is I don't know, other than like really drawing out each one. And it's actually a very rabbinic, that sort of discourse, that back and forth of like, well, what if you have a gun and he doesn't? Or what if it's nighttime and you can't really see what's happening? Or, you know, he was starving. Like I think of like, have you guys ever seen Les Miserables? You know, like Jean Valjean, who like breaks into a house, you know, he's like, I broke a window pane. He just like broke into the house to steal a loaf of bread because he was starving.
Like you said, it depends on the situation. If it's like a homeless person that's really hungry and that breaks in your house for like a loaf of bread, that's fine. But if it's like someone who's like a robber who's breaking your house, and if you have a gun, you can like point at them, say, get out of the house or else I'll shoot. So you can say that too.
Could I add another alternative though?
Yeah.
Because like we're talking about these questions of morality, right? And a lot of us think the choice is to defend your house or not. You could, and like there's this famous story about Jane Addams. I don't know if you know Jane Addams' Hull House, who somebody kept a guy broke in, immigrant guy broke into her house, the Hull House, and she caught him and was trying to steal food, and she said, well, do you need a job? We can get you a job. And that's how she started helping all these people, right? So, I don't know, should you be shooting somebody when you don't understand why they're breaking into your house? Or do you want to make a connection with them? Is the more moral thing to do is to say, hey, look, there is a reason why you're doing this crime, right? Can we alleviate that reason? Or is it more moral to not commit violence to them and then investigate the societal reasons why people are compelled to do things like that, and what's missing in our even broader educational system, what's missing in our welfare system, what's missing in our social systems that are creating a situation where somebody feels like my best shot at getting what I want is taking your stuff.
Speaking to what you're saying now, is there a sort of social explanation for people's behavior that explains why they might do something in a way that we can all relate to and understand? Or are there some people that are just like super messed up and like want to hurt other people? I think those kind of like world viewpoints, and maybe it's both, I don't know. Like maybe there are some super messed up people that you can't negotiate with at all that are just like sadistic and want to hurt people. We would hope that people are good, and it kind of goes, and the Torah talks about this a lot, going to that question of like, what is the nature of human beings? Are we inherently good or are we inherently bad? There's definitely sections in the Torah that say man's nature is inherently selfish and inherently bad. So what do we do with that?
Hi, caller. You're on air.
Hi, Raghav. I'm Josh. I'm calling in with the problem.
Sorry to hear that, Josh. What's your problem? Happy to help you out today.
I just found someone's wallet on the street with $100 and an ID. What do I do? Do I keep it or return it?
Well, Josh, it's kind of a classic problem. There's a lot of philosophers that have talked about problems like this. Let's take a look at it from the perspective of the Jewish concept of Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara, or the good and evil inclinations.
That sounds really interesting. Tell me more about that.
No problem. You could think of like an angel and a devil on your shoulder. Yetzer Tov, that's kind of like the angel. It tells you to do altruistic things that help other people. On the other hand, Yetzer Hara, that's like the devil, tells you to do things that benefit only yourself.
So which one should I choose?
In this case, I think the right thing to do would be to listen to your Yetzer Tov and return the wallet and money. Remember though, you can't always listen to just your Yetzer Tov. Sometimes you need to do things for yourself as well.
When would I need to do that?
Well, if you're not feeling well, you should probably stay home and focus on getting better than going out and helping other people. By helping yourself in that situation, you are making sure you can help more people in the future.
Thanks for the tip, Raghav. I'll go and return the wallet immediately.
No problem, Josh. Glad I can help you. Some of the most interesting and fun interviews we did were of older students.
Yeah, those older kids really have some interesting perspectives and insights.
Being B'nai Mitzvah really does make you smarter. I can't wait.
Let's hear a little of what at least one of them had to say on right and wrong and how they decide.
What does it mean for you to be good?
I mean, like doing the right thing and like helping others when they need it and like giving tzedakah. Sometimes it's better to do the right thing than follow the rules, depending on what it is, though. Like if you're trying to help someone, that's sometimes more important than following the rules. I think the good and the bad and how I want to feel like after doing it, if I want to feel like good about it. So I think about that. One time when I was on a school trip, all of my friends, like there was 8 of us and all 7 of them wanted to hang out in the like middle of the night and we weren't allowed to leave our rooms. So I had to think about if I wanted to go or not, even though I really wanted to go. I didn't because it was outweighing the good versus the bad of it.
I'm Avi, and I'm interviewing Josiah. On a day-to-day basis, do you think you see more good or more bad in the world?
I think I see more good, ultimately. There's definitely a lot of dread. I mean, global warming. The U.S. is definitely, like, close to civil war. I mean, there's definitely a lot of, like, dreading things that can warp people to see more bad than good. But in my day-to-day life, through my experiences, I see way more good. I definitely see a lot of people helping each other out, a lot of kind acts. People are kind to me, overwhelmingly more good.
What do you think makes you a good person?
Sticking to your core values, whatever they are. Obviously, unless they're terrible, like be mean, but that's no one's real true core values, I think. So I do think ultimately it means sticking to your core values, being true to yourself, being honest about what you want to see happen, and then getting it done. You know, not getting influenced by other people around you, right? The biggest thing is just being yourself. Approaching every situation that you have with kindness, having a positive attitude about a lot of things. If you go into a situation with somebody where, let's say they're not being kind to you, rather than reciprocating that, you want to try to see things from their perspective and ultimately just truly and honestly within yourself try to make a positive impact on every situation that you go into.
What are your core values?
Kindness, loyalty, and thoughtfulness.
How do you know the difference between good and bad?
I think there's no real, obviously this is a thing that's made up, but the angel, devil on your shoulder, right? Good influence, bad influence, all the time, no matter who you are, no matter what you are, there is going to be a voice in your head that is telling you to do something that is wrong. And I think ultimately being bad means succumbing to that influence and actually doing those things. The example of cheating on a test, that's again a good example of the bad voice in your head overcoming you and you doing something that ultimately that you shouldn't be doing and doing it anyway. And I think that's still redeemable, right? I think with good, with working on yourself and trying to better yourself, obviously it's still redeemable and you could end up in a good situation even after making a bad decision. But I think that's the real difference. The impact of doing bad on one test is less than the impact of not only cheating and getting caught, right, and then getting reprimanded and having to redo a bunch of stuff, but also cheating and not getting caught, because then I don't know that material and it might come back to bite me later in the near future with a final test or even later on in my schooling if I don't know the information from that because I decided to cheat on it. I didn't study at all.
This may be between two countries, but do you think Israel and Palestine are both good and bad?
In terms of what, the recent conflict?
I guess so.
I think just Israel and Palestine are too broad. I mean, it's not a new idea that war is bad. And I do believe in that war is bad, but I think it's more complex than that because you have different people with different cultures, right? Not all Israeli people are Jewish, not all Palestinian people are Muslim, right? So and that's just one example. I mean, that's an assumption that some people make. I think ultimately I care about the people, right? And not really the government. I don't really have any sympathy for the governments of Israel or Palestine because part of my things that I do here through our 8th and 9th grade curriculum has been looking at the governments of Israel and Palestine, and I think both of them definitely have terrible people within them. So I have a lot of sympathy for the people of Israel and Palestine, and especially the people who have lost family or the people who have passed away during the conflict. I think war is terrible. I think it's something that never should happen. I just really hope that the people are okay. I hope the governments can find a way to just stop fighting. And ultimately, the people who have lost family members, lost friends, right, lost loved ones in any way, shape, or form, can heal from that. And I think it truly is a terrible thing to happen. So I guess my answer to your question is I think it's more complex than is Israel good, Palestine bad, or Palestine good, Israel bad.
In a scenario where what you believe is the right thing and the rules are conflicted, would you follow the rules or do what you believe is the right thing?
I would fully and wholeheartedly do what I think is the right thing. Sticking with your core values is more important than following an arbitrary set of rules. I know a lot of instances where this conflict has come up with me. One of the examples is last year at my school, we had a Black History Month assembly. The people who were running walked out on the assembly as a sort of bigger stance against the systemic racism that goes on within our school, and that was technically against the rules because you're not supposed to skip the assembly. I opted to go with them and support that because I believed in the bigger message rather than the arbitrary rule. So definitely sticking with my core values is more important to me.
Are there any other examples you could share with us?
One time in one of my classes, I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom when I really needed to. and I left and did it anyway and had to deal with the consequences later. I feel that, and this is more general, not really a specific situation, but I feel sometimes older people believe that they deserve better than me just because they are older, and I just don't allow myself to be disrespected. So I think sometimes I try to take a stance against that. I always believe in my core values. If they align with the rules, then I think that's great. If they don't, then I think I should try to do something about that.
What would you do if your core value of loyalty conflicted with your sense of what is right? Say if one of your friends was like, hey, I need you to help me write this mean message to this kid who bullied me a lot last year. And you were really loyal to that friend, but you didn't think it was right. What would you do?
Really, it's just about having a conversation with that person. I mean, that's a good solution to a lot of issues. Just having a good faith conversation. I definitely remind them that, like, they shouldn't reciprocate that bad energy back into the world. One decision like that wouldn't change my loyalty towards a person. If they make consecutive decisions like that and it starts to be a pattern, then I'd have to reevaluate. It definitely is about having a deeper conversation with them, unearthing why they would do something like that, why they would want my help doing something like that, and trying to convince them not to.
Next caller, you're on air.
Hey, Regev, I'm Owen. I see a homeless guy on the streets every day, and he keeps asking me to give him a spare change. Should I buy my house with my salary?
Can you afford to buy him a house?
No. I'd have to sell my house to afford it.
Maybe you shouldn't do that then. Let's look at this from the perspective of Maimonides' ladder of giving.
I don't know. I don't like climbing ladders. I'm kind of scared of heights.
Don't worry, Owen. We'll keep you firmly grounded with this one. This ladder isn't an actual ladder. This ladder describes 8 different kinds of giving and ranks them from lowest to highest. In fact, the very best thing you could do does not even require you to give something physical.
But what could be better than cold or hard cash?
Well, according to Maimonides, the highest level of giving is, rather than just giving the person money once, making sure that they can support themselves in the future. It's like you're giving to them over and over every day.
You know, now that you mention it, I don't own a company that employs 30,000 people. Maybe I could give this guy a job. Thanks for your suggestion, Regev.
No problem, Owen.
Over the school year, we have studied many different moral and ethical dilemmas. We looked at the ideas of many different thinkers, both rabbis and philosophers.
But some of the most fun we had was debating some of the most difficult moral and ethical questions with one another.
Here is a recording of one of those discussions.
The question is, a nuclear bomb has been planted in a building downtown, which will blow up and destroy the city, killing all 1.3 million inhabitants. What you can do as a CIA operative is destroy the building that the bomb is held in, killing all 10,000 people in that building. What do you do?
I think that the government should really take control of this issue because it could happen again. It's already happened once, and I think that we need to save these people. But I think that the government can really help with that because there are people who are suffering out there, and I think that this is just one of those many problems. So I think that frankly we're not being treated fairly.
I totally agree. So on this whole topic thing, I am currently debating because this is either 1.3 million, but then I feel ashamed, and I feel like I could have saved 1.29 million people. But then I also feel ashamed that I killed 10,000 people. That's a big number. It's a lot to comprehend unless that's your salary. And I think that, I am honestly debating right now.
I would kill everybody in that building because people die every day. And when people die, because people die naturally, and soon everybody will die.
I agree because, a lot of people are dying already, so, yeah, I agree.
I think that I would. A city with no inhabitants would be bad, and what would happen to all the animals and everything and all the stuff. And also, I agree with SJ. The government should take control of this situation. Also, as a CIA operative, can't I just burst in there and defuse the bomb before it kills everyone? Don't I have another option in this situation?
So I think that there might be. Now I'm thinking this might sound like a very selfish view, and personally, if I was a CIA operative, there might be a chance that I would get the death penalty. I don't even know if they still do that in the United States. I don't think they do.
They do.
They do?
Yeah, they do.
So I think I might get the death penalty for the homicide of 10,000 people. And on the other hand, I would also die if I'm in the radius of the nuclear bomb. So this way or that, for me, it's no good. So I might as well just kill the 10,000.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
What if you were outside the radius of the nuclear blast?
Then I'd probably be in such depression I couldn't move because I would also feel ashamed for the death of 1.3 million people. Just big number.
So let me just elaborate a bit on what I said earlier about, the government. So here's the thing, obviously the government is doing something wrong if, there are people suffering every single day. Because, when I go to bed at night, I'm aware that there are, people outside who are, on the streets. And that's not fair. So I think that obviously we need to put some changes down on that. Obviously, the government is doing something wrong if they're letting people just, do that. They're letting 10,000 people die in a building, and they're letting a bomb. So I think that we need to fix that.
Why would they have to kill all 10,000 people in the building? Because wouldn't they only have to kill the people who are planting the bomb or controlling the bomb?
Assuming that was the only way to do it.
What I would do is I would find another way to do it. There has to be multiple ways to do it.
I certainly do not believe that this is a possible reality.
The government should obviously step in. Although I guess the CIA is the government. But would there be a way to remove the nuclear bomb and transport it somewhere else in a desert where there's nothing, like Death Valley or something?
So on SJ's whole government thingy, if the government does put this much power in a single person who can either kill 10,000 or kill 1.3 million, where does that put the government? If they hold you responsible for the death of 10,000, can't they also be held responsible for the death of 10,000?
Shouldn't the whole CIA be involved? Isn't this an emergency? But putting this much power in one person has historically never worked out. Dictatorships, they're bad. So much power in one person, they can make bad decisions, get trust, stuff like that. So it's better to spread power around and maybe have all the CIA and maybe the FBI too.
Right. I think what this is assuming is you're just the person who pushes the button that blows up the building.
Well, could you tell the government to have someone else do it?
Okay, let's take a final vote. If you would not blow up the building, raise your hand right now. That's one. And if you would blow up the building to not let the nuclear bomb go off, raise your hand now. And I need a choice from everyone. Okay, so that's 4. 2 of you didn't raise your hands. So I'm going to assume that the 2 of you that didn't raise your hand are just abstaining.
So on SJ's whole government thingy, if the government does put this much power in a single person who can either kill 10,000 or kill 1.3 million, where does that put the government? Could they, if they hold you responsible for the death of 10,000, can't they also be held responsible for the death of 10,000?
So I'm going to assume that the 2 of you that didn't raise your hand are just abstaining.
have a very important caller on the line. Put him through.
Hi, Regev. This is God.
No way.
I heard your show. I love what you're doing here. And I just want to say, keep up the good work. You're making my job much easier up here. I love the advice you're giving people. Keeping them on the right track makes what I do much, much easier.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I got to run. I got a lot of things on my plate. But keep up the good work.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our insights and ideas.
The Good Podcast was created and written by the 6th, 7th grade class at KAM Isaiah Israel. It was produced and edited by Director of Lifelong Learning Deanna Neal and co-produced by Shoresh teachers Adam Leibovich-Glicken and Jake Sklarski. The recordings took place from October of 2023 to May of 2024. The views expressed in this podcast belong to each individual and are not representative of KAM Isaiah Israel. A Reformed Jewish community located in Hyde Park, Chicago, KAM Isaiah Israel was founded in 1847, making it the oldest Jewish congregation in Illinois. The Good Podcast was a project of KMII's unique Shabbat-based Jewish education program called Shoresh. Shoresh, Jewish Roots for Life.